Anyway, speaking of worm-like individuals, ICE. They're doing raids in LA. I got to pee. Protesters in Los Angeles have taken to the streets and are trying to disrupt the attempts of the Gestapo kidnapping people from warehouses.
Now at 11, chaos erupts as armed federal agents conduct sweeping immigration raids across Los Angeles. Good evening, I'm Micah Ullman.
And I'm Cher Calvin. Dozens were arrested during the sweep as angry protesters clashed with federal agents on the streets of downtown LA.
The surprise raids took place this morning, but the chaos continues into the night as hundreds face off with police. It all began at a Home Depot and then in LA's Garment District as federal agents used flashbang grenades to clear the protesters who were trying to disrupt the operation, targeting undocumented workers.
We have live team coverage of the raids and the protests. Lindsay Pena has reaction from the immigrant community. But we begin with Chris Wolf live near the Metropolitan Detention Center where the arrestees are being held tonight. Chris.
Yeah, Cher and Micah, protesters keep shifting locations around government buildings. Here in downtown LA, we have heard continuous sirens and clamor and the buzz of LAPD choppers overhead with spotlights cutting through the night sky. Police and FBI agents are keeping protesters away from the Roybal Federal Building and the Metropolitan Detention Center, buildings that were earlier vandalized and spray painted. Friday night, downtown LA, as an army of federal and local law enforcement personnel guards government buildings, including a detention center where suspected violators of immigration laws are being held. It's a tense cap-off to an explosive day. Tear gas, flashbangs, angry crowds, and heavily armed and armored U.S. immigration and customs enforcement agents marked a volatile Friday in the heart of Los Angeles during a series of immigration sweeps. Agents swarmed into at least 3 locations looking for suspected immigration law violators. The blowback was fast and fierce, with some protesters jumping in front of law enforcement vehicles to prevent them from moving.
They did need to bring in some backup here.
There are more of us than there are of them. This is something to remember, okay? That's number one. Number two, remember how this administration came into power claiming that they were prosecuting and going after violent criminals? Why are they doing dragnet searches at warehouses when people are working at work at their place of business? Are those the violent criminals that they are prosecuting, that they're apprehending? They're like, oh yeah, there's a real crisis. There is a real crisis of violent crime in the undocumented migrant communities, and we must prosecute. The Joe Brandon administration is simply not prosecuting these violent criminals, right? That was the argument. And I kept saying over and over again, like, the idea that police and law enforcement and the judicial system would just simply turn around and be like, oh, this guy did a rape, but they're Guatemalan migrant and they're undocumented. Let him go, please. Like, the idea that that was the reality that the Republicans were presenting was so stupid, so insane, that it was the easiest thing to counter message against by simply pointing to, by simply asking some basic questions like, oh, that doesn't make any sense, does it? And yet the Democrats didn't do that. And the Republicans basically ran the entire media landscape with these ridiculous claims, these ridiculous assertions. And of course, because these assertions were completely ridiculous and their goal wasn't to actually apprehend violent criminals, their goal was to simply apprehend anyone and everyone that they don't want to give a citizenship status to, that they should give a citizenship status to, people with temporary work visas, people that actually are legally, like with the proper documentation, working on U.S. soil right now inside of sanctuary cities like California. This is One, federal overreach of epic magnitude, going into a sanctuary state and going into a sanctuary city where no one in California, people in California yell about the crime all the time, but no one in California talks about undocumented migrants. People in California do not point to undocumented migrants and say, this is insane, we have to do something about it. As a matter of fact, it's one of the greatest examples that I always use all the time. Like, people will make a big fuss about undocumented migrants in Texas, but there's more undocumented migrants in the state of California, and yet no one ever complains about it because it is a part of our communities, okay? Undocumented and documented migrants are a big part of our fucking community. It is a part of the social fabric in Los Angeles. It's a social fabric and a part of the California culture, okay? They are workers that pay taxes. They're just trying to make a living. They're not doing anything to anyone. They're not, they're not disrupting anything. And yet, now the federal government has decided that they're going to do this anyway. And here we are. A tremendous amount of resistance and a tremendous amount of resentment born out of this kind of illegal enforcement, this ridiculous action. Our leadership needs to step in. This is the reason why people vote Democrat, to step in times like this, so that there are sanctuary city protections. Okay? It is ridiculous. It is unacceptable. The fact that Los Angeles Police Department was offering cover for ICE and federal law enforcement to engage in this dragnet operation at a fucking warehouse is completely unacceptable. Our leadership needs to step the fuck out and have someone else lead, preferably someone progressive. I can't believe it. Like, this is pure and utter fascism in full display. Okay? Make up a fake problem. Undocumented migrants are responsible for crime. And then in the process of fixing the fake problem that you made up, that you really whipped up a frenzy around, you go and you hurt regular ass people, normal ass people. You're just your neighbors. You know what I mean? People that are not causing harm to anybody. While in the process of simultaneously claiming that you are doing this because you have to go after criminals. Okay, why are you deporting 4-year-old cancer patients then? Why are you deporting mothers? Why are you going to a warehouse where people are working during the workday to do a dragnet operation and apprehend as many people as you possibly can? Why? Are those the criminals? This is why, obviously, I kept repeating over and over again my disbelief when I heard people who were like, I'm undocumented, but if I had a citizenship, I would vote for Donald Trump. Or my cousin is undocumented, but I voted for Donald Trump. It's like, dude, what are you doing? What the fuck are you doing? It was never about deporting these violent criminals, because those violent criminals are made up. This doesn't mean that there aren't violent criminals that are undocumented. Of course there are. There are violent criminals in every category. Okay? But those people that engage in heinous or violent acts are quickly apprehended and prosecuted. When these guys say the undocumented violent criminals, they're talking about Haitians with temporary protected status, the proper legal documentation to work in Springfield, Ohio. They openly stated that. They were calling them illegal aliens. They're not illegal aliens. They are legally here. Their status is being revoked. They claim that if you are black or brown and you're on U.S. soil, okay, and you're not a naturalized citizen or a natural born U.S. citizen, then they can take away that status. And they want to take away that status erroneously for no real reason. And it's not because they want to combat crime. This in and of itself is a crime. So when people don't recognize that, when people don't understand that, when people delude themselves into thinking that like these kinds of incredible acts of violence that are genuinely a waste of resources, okay? A real waste of fucking resources for no reason whatsoever, with only negative consequences. When people think that these acts are actually for the overall good, they're deluding themselves. They don't understand. I don't know how people turn a blind eye to atrocities that are happening in their backyard against their neighbors, against their loved ones. I to a certain degree, I understand, like when you think about Gaza, when you think about genocide that is being conducted with our tax dollars, right? That's happening over there. So maybe you can turn a blind eye to that. You shouldn't. And that's still unconscionable because there's so much death and destruction. We are morally culpable for that death and destruction. But like, this is literally your neighborhood. You know what I mean? This is happening all around the country. And it's not happening for any good reason other than the fact that the Republicans have successfully dehumanized entire swaths of the American population. Make no mistake, a lot of these dudes that they're apprehending are already either A, waiting for their court date, and they are they have the legal allowance to be inside of US borders. They are simply waiting for their court date so they can get processed or have actual fucking visas, temporary work orders. They are allowed to be here. They're allowed to work. It's the administration that magically removes that dial or turns it in the other direction and says, nah, you're illegal now. You're an illegal alien. We have revoked your protection. Do you understand? When someone says illegal alien, there is an image in the back of people's minds, a racist one for the most part. This idea that like some MS-13 tatted up gang member secretly hopped over the border, right? And came in with a bunch of drugs, maybe like kidnapped people, did a bunch of crimes. That's not how it is. The overwhelming majority of these people, the overwhelming majority of people that are considered illegal aliens by the right, are just simply black and brown migrants that are awaiting their fucking court date to receive or have already received their temporary work status. They're just turning that around. They're just basically saying, you don't have this anymore. Or we actually changed the court date deliberately so you couldn't show up, and now you have an immediate removal order on your name. It's not the community, it's leaders in charge that don't want to protect people. These cases are hugely unpopular with the general public. Exactly. Anyway, I'm a natural born citizen, but my father was born in El Salvador. When he came here, he became affiliated with MS-13 before I was born. After I was born, he tried for years to gain a citizenship, and towards the end, he had to remove tattoos, nothing related to MS-13. Although he finally received citizenship, it was revoked a year or two ago. I sometimes wonder if his history will affect my citizenship, even though I was born here. That's crazy. That's crazy that even, like, as a natural born U.S. citizen, you have constitutionally protected rights. Like, you are an American. And the very fact that you're, like, considering this is terrifying, because that's where we're at now. Like, there is a real fear of denaturalization now. They want to call it remigration. I mentioned this before, but ICE has been waiting outside the courthouse to detain those who are following orders. Lawyers in Florida also scamming people to go to their appointments. Yeah, here, if you want to understand like how little this has anything to do with criminality, look at this. Trump's masked ICE Gestapo snatches a woman when her lawyer goes to the bathroom, then forcibly carries her into an elevator after she appears to faint. They wait when someone is at an immigration court proceeding. They're in the hallway. ICE comes in, apprehends the person in the hallway when they notice that her lawyer is in the bathroom.
Hold on, let's get her lawyer.
Her lawyer's in the bathroom. That's why they're taking her now. You waited until her lawyer leaves. Seriously, her lawyer's in the bathroom. I'm recording this.
Masked agents, by the way. It's illegal now for you to wear a mask when you're at a protest or just in general, even if you want to mask up for other safety or your own privacy, but also, like, again, for health reasons, right? You don't want to be a super spreader or whatever. That's illegal. But cops, they can wear masks to hide and protect their identities. Interesting. Public servants wearing masks to hide their identities. Why has this become such a common meta, you think? It's become a common meta because they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing is Nazi shit, okay? They know that there is going to be repercussions for this kind of behavior. It shouldn't be illegal for protesters to wear masks. It should be illegal for the cops to wear masks while they're in the process of doing cop shit. What are we doing? We pay these people's salaries. What do you mean? They get to just like apprehend people at their court proceedings.
This. Her lawyer's in the bathroom. Hey, Kate, they're taking your client. Kate, they're taking your client. She's fainting, Kate.
Can I go in the bathroom?
She's a female. Yes, you're allowed to go in the bathroom. Dude, she's fainting on the hallway. Wait until get medical.
No.
You can't. You want a medical? You can't transport her.
You need to leave her.
Get medical services. Come on.
No.
Hey, you can't.
This can lead to random ass people pretending to be cops. It already has. A bunch of white supremacists have also been deputized, according to eyewitness testimony so far in other parts of the country. They don't have enough manpower to do this kind of shit to begin with the police force that already exists. Even though the police force that already exists is pretty fucking large, trying to do mass deportations of 20 million people, Gestapo style, like Nazi Germany style, requires an endless amount of support. They have to deputize people or use the military or use the National Guard. That's what the federal government is trying to do.
You can't manhandle her into an elevator. You're manhandling her into an elevator. You're manhandling her into an elevator, dude. Her lawyer's in the bathroom.
Hold on, let's get her lawyer. Let her.
Is there someone that knows the legal ramifications of intervening on this? Oh, there is nothing. Like, I mean, you will also go to jail. They'll probably release you, or you'll get obstruction of justice charges. The only way to stop this is with overwhelming numbers. When there are like a lot of people, like too many people, and the cops feel unsafe, I guess, to conduct their activities like this. Only then have I ever seen police officers back away. Like there are images from Minneapolis and even parts of San Diego, or even what you're seeing right now. This kind of mobilization, like mass community mobilization, protecting one another when our institutions won't protect us is the only way to disrupt these sorts of illegal and unjustifiable, unconscionable acts that the federal government is entertaining and engaging in. And of course, given the way that this administration is actively trying to criminalize speech, I'm certain that even me saying this one day could be presented as illegal, okay? Oh, Hasan is urging people to do something illegal. It's like, no, people have a right to engage in civil disobedience, and there are unjustifiable acts that the state engages in that people have every right to resist against, okay? If you look at our history with chattel slavery and the defense of chattel slavery, if you look at our history with the civil rights struggle, and you understand that brave individuals that found these actions, these legal actions by the state to be unconscionable and took matters into their own hands and protested against these kinds of actions and disrupted these kinds of illegal and unjustifiable actions, if you find those people to be in the right historically, then you can understand where we're at right now as well. We just did it in Compton. People this morning, people figured out ICE was coming, blocked the entrance to Home Depot. They parked across the street, then tried walking in, couldn't drive off. Yeah. Why is there not more civilian protests against ICE? There are. There are. What do you mean? I participated in one. I was at a rally, a pro-Palestinian rally that marched to the ICE headquarters in D.C. for the immediate release of Mahmoud Khalil. And also, what you're watching right now here in Los Angeles, this is a spontaneous mobilization, a popular mobilization of the people in the community that find these actions to be unconscionable. The reason why you don't hear about it too much is because the media doesn't cover it as much. I mean, this is like a massive issue, and I think that's the reason why KTLA is covering it, and this will probably make it. This kind of mobilization does end up causing the media to cover it. But ultimately, this has to happen. This kind of rapid mobilization has to take place, both in the short term to try and stop the federal government from engaging in these violent, heinous actions that are not only invoking Nazi Germany, but also simultaneously are completely unproductive in every aspect. Like this is inhumane, right? You're ripping people away from their day-to-day existence for no reason other than the fact that you want them out of the country, right? By lying about their background, saying that they're criminals and dehumanizing them in the exact same way that Nazis did with Jews, socialists, communists, and using the same process to basically rip them away from their communities, away from their families, away from their loved ones, away from their place of work. Because that's what the Nazis did as well. It was a process of denaturalization. Jews were no longer considered citizens of the state after the race laws. Same with socialists and communists that were also sent to these concentration camps. They were considered no longer individuals of the state. They were actively dehumanized against, and then simultaneously, through the legal process, they became non-citizens, and you can do whatever you want to non-citizens in the, at the time. And clearly that's what this administration is trying to do as well. So even the mechanisms of the state are damn near identical. And I do not think that this will stop with just undocumented migrants, especially because most of these people that they are calling illegal aliens are not actually illegal aliens, right? They're not illegal aliens in the way that you think they are. They're not just like devoid of any sort of paperwork whatsoever. They are legally on U.S. soil. It's just the government has the capacity to switch that process off. Okay? That's it. Someone who is legal today can be considered illegal tomorrow. Because, as I always say, and I always stress, the difference between a documented migrant and an undocumented migrant is just documentation, is just paperwork. It's the government saying you're allowed to be here versus you're not allowed to be here. And up until recently, there was at least like a little bit of back and forth in this, and there was a little bit of normalcy around this process where people that came to the United States of America that were seeking asylum, legally, mind you, would have to cross the border. Most of them are legally waiting for their asylum case to be heard. They're still undocumented, but it's not illegal. Exactly. These are not people that just have no interest in like dealing with the paperwork or dealing with law enforcement. These are people who came into the United States, applied for a legal asylum claim, and they are awaiting their court dates, and the government decides, nah, no court date for you. You got to get the fuck out because you're a criminal, rapist, drug dealer, parasite. These people are not, one, they're not criminal, rapist, drug dealer, parasites, because if they were criminal rapists, like the previous government would have prosecuted them, and clearly the administration would not actually entertain the notion of revoking due process, because due process would show that they have just cause to deport these people. So if the government, I ask you once again, if a government can declare your status illegal with no real reason other than made up claims that you are a fucking criminal and that every single person that came from all different walks of life from all across the planet to the tune of 20 million are now overnight considered non-persons, non-citizens, and must be fucking deported instantly to an El Salvador concentration camp with no due process, why the fuck do you think this won't come for you inevitably? A government that does not entertain the humanity of all people, even those who are waiting in line to become legal asylum seekers, so they are technically legally on U.S. soil awaiting their court date, a government that just decides we're switching that off, and now you're all targets of the state, enemies of the state. A government that does that will come for you as well and will say the exact same things about you as well, and me, all of us. Whoever they decide to do this kind of thing towards. So what you do in this moment matters. What you do in this moment in resistance against these kinds of ridiculous and violent actions of the federal government matter, because this is basically training for when it comes for you, okay? This is community organizing and mass mobilization that will be an absolute necessity. It's an absolute necessity right now, and one day it'll be an absolute necessity to protect you as well and your loved ones as well.
TLA was in the air and on the ground during the immigration enforcement firestorm. Footage shows federal agents chasing.
It's not illegal to enable a narco cesspit. What? You can't even spell. First of all, I think you mean narco, not anarcho. And cesspit, that's not how you sell cesspit either. I'm so confused as to how a lot of these people have this feeling of superiority towards those who are being victimized by the state right now, but they're so fucking stupid. You're just a stupid person, and I guess the only way that you can feel superior is if Big Daddy government is like doing violence to those who you think are inferior to you, and only then do you fucking feel superior. Is that it? That's what a fucking weak man does, all right? That's not what a strong man does. You're not a strong man at all. You're weak. You're weak. You're dumb. You're angry. And you're too stupid to recognize that one day you or a loved one could just as easily be in the fucking crosshairs.
A lot of a Home Depot in the Westlake district, not far from downtown Los Angeles. Individuals often gather at home improvement stores looking for temporary work opportunities.
That Home Depot that they're filming is the one that I went to get the Christmas tree.
Another raid unfolded at a clothing store along Town Avenue in the Fashion District, where agents hauled off multiple workers in handcuffs, loading them into vans, as other agents in riot gear clashed with onlookers in what could be described as a tense standoff. Immigration rights advocates joined the showdown, using megaphones at times to speak to garment industry workers, telling them to avoid signing any paperwork or speaking to federal agents. The activity is the latest roundup in the Trump administration's unparalleled crackdown on illegal immigration. Another ICE raid Friday targeted what appeared to be a clothing warehouse or possibly...
They shadow banned your account today? Had to look you up by name? I doubt it. Everybody always says this, but... Everybody always says stuff like this, but I don't think it's real. It's just like your own phone is probably bricked or something.
Corporate headquarters building in the South Los Angeles area.
Since this happened today and no one was notified, will this happen again tomorrow? Will it be next week? Will it be next month? It's that sense
right here.
of uncertainty, fear, and anxiety that is created in our city when this happens.
One demonstrator shouted at authorities tonight, quote, "This is..."
Am I crazy for thinking all these counter-protests are fuel to declare martial law? I mean, the idea that this is like unproductive to try and actively resist against this kind of illegal enforcement, illegal immigrant enforcement action is inevitably going to be used to declare martial law. Like, what are you supposed to do? Just fucking lean into it? Just, you know, concede unconditionally ahead of time?
Day one of the war. Reporting live in downtown Los Angeles, Chris Wolf, KTLA 5 News.
Chris, thank you. The sweeping raids igniting furious protests and contentious standoffs between activists and ICE agents and police. The detention of at least 45 individuals, including a union president, is the latest chapter in President Trump's escalating immigration crackdown.
Lindsay Pena live in downtown LA with reaction to the arrests from people who have loved ones caught up in the chaos. Lindsay.
Yeah, that's right, Micah and Cher. Now, we're right across the street from the federal building where that rally and protest started hours ago this afternoon, and there is still activity taking place tonight. You can hear people honking, and another crowd has gathered just across the street right now. We did talk to someone who says that her husband was caught up in those raids earlier today, and now she is wondering what will happen to her family.
We have elected officials at every level of government.
Hundreds gathered outside the federal building on Los Angeles Street Friday afternoon following ICE raids.
The Democrats are full complicit in this? Absolutely. Abso-fucking-lutely. And they have to do everything in their power going forward, every waking moment to basically work against everything that they've done leading up to this moment. Obviously, the real harm is still coming from the Republicans, but the Democratic Party allowed this to happen. The Democratic Party leaned into the anti-immigrant sentiment instead of actively counter-messaging against Republicans that always use immigration as a problem. They always claim that immigrants are violent with no evidence whatsoever. That's what's so frustrating beyond the dehumanization, beyond all of these other like immediate horrible things, is how foreseeable this actually was. I've been screaming about this for years at this point. This is yet another one of those issues that I constantly rail against the Democrats for not doing enough to both defend migrants and to also actively counter message against the Republican dehumanization of migrants.
At several locations earlier in the day. Among those in the crowd was Dulce Camacho, who tells KTLA her husband was taken into custody near a Home Depot in Westlake.
I was able to see him for 10 minutes. He said they haven't gave him anything to eat. They made him sign some papers. You know, he speaks some English, but he doesn't read it well. So I know he doesn't know what he signed.
Originally from Mexico, she says he's been in the country for 13 years and is undocumented. Now she...
The other side of the story that I keep trying to warn against is that when people recognize that the instruments of justice that are supposed to defend us, this border crisis, when instruments of justice that are supposed to defend every single citizen and every single person on U.S. soil unconditionally are no longer doing that, when the social contract is ripped apart in a way that every single person can understand, every single person can comprehend, then there will be a lot of decentralized acts of violence. Do you understand? When people look to the situation in front of them and go, okay, well, the government's not protecting me. I have to protect my own. I have to protect my family. I have to rely on others. Then yeah, it's bedlam. It's chaos. The whole purpose of liberal democracy is so that there is this social contract that's supposed to be maintained so that there is some stability. It's going away. As more and more people recognize that the government is not here to protect them at all, when there's no pressure valve, people are understandably going to do everything they can to protect themselves. As a queer American immigrant in Germany, there's stress because second-generation naturalized Syrians are stabbing queer people in Berlin, singling out queer faculty schools and proclaiming Islam as boss. What's the answer to balancing immigration? What? First of all, number one, we're talking about America. Secondly, get this anti-migrant Islamophobic shit out of here. Stay in fucking Germany then, okay? It's ironic because you're a fucking queer American immigrant in Germany. The equivalent here would be the German government with mass Gestapo officers coming and fucking breaking down your door and ripping you away from your bed in the middle of the night to not deport you back to America, but to a third place where you will have no protections whatsoever. Okay? If you want to understand what this looks like as a goddamn American dumbass who is an immigrant in a foreign nation, just think about it like that. Hey, sorry, I fantasized about Syrians coming and fucking killing me and saying that they're going to do it for Sharia law as a migrant myself in Germany. So much of this is just like, so much of this unironically stems from people just like making up shit and then freaking out about whatever they fantasized. Sorry, I made something up. I fantasized about it. I fantasized about a scary thing happening to me. And someone needs to do something about this. This may be a stupid question and I should really be more educated, but what exactly is the end goal of this? Is this administration just satisfying the white supremacist ideologies of their constituents? Is this to further push against class solidarity? Like, who's making money from this? This kind of enforcement action is a way to appease the masses. You're leaning into, after years and years and years of dividing and conquering, you're leaning into some of the most like racist ambitions that people have. The end goal is fascism, which is already here, to be fair. The end goal is full control. Fascism creates stability without disrupting the pre-existing capitalist hierarchy. Some beautiful redecorating outside the federal detention center. LA's just fuck ICE.
She has to tell her two daughters their father won't be home tonight.
I explained to her when we picked her up from school with my sister, you know, that I've been talking to her every day about this, so she kind of knows. I told her I don't know what we're going to do, but we're going to be okay, you know. We don't have a big family, but we have my sister, my brother-in-law, and, you know, with that, we're going to be okay and stick together and try to get him. If he is able to get released here, then that's great. If not, then, you know, work hard and try to see how we could keep the family together.
Shame on you! Shame on you!
Also taken into custody today was SEIU California President David Huerta. In a statement on X, U.S. Attorney Bill Isaly said he was, quote, arrested for interfering with federal officers and will face arraignment in federal court on Monday.
Had to be taken to the hospital, and he's being detained for exercising his First Amendment rights. So we're asking for the immediate release of our President David Huerta.
Local elected officials who spoke at today's rally, like Assemblymember Mark Gonzalez, say they will fight for the people affected by the raids.
We're making sure that what they're doing in this building, how are they detaining folks, that they have full rights. And we're telling people you need to know your rights.
Now, Sharon, Micah, back out here live. I want to direct your attention to protesters and law enforcement here at the entrance to the 101 South. We are at Los Angeles and Aliso Street. There was a confrontation just moments ago, but it does look like those protesters are moving on further down Los Angeles.
Why do you need fascism in a country like the U.S.? Both parties are already puppets of capitalists. Great question. It's because when both parties are still puppets of capitalists and capital owners, there is still a lot of instability born out of the contradictions worsening. There's still a lot of economic volatility, economic instability, and people get angry, they get restless, and one party, at the very least, has to redirect that attention and redirect that anger and resentment towards more vulnerable populations in an effort to keep things going. Because if people don't actually decide that undocumented migrants or like trans people or all these like vulnerable defenseless populations are actually responsible for all the awful things that they're experiencing, they might actually catch wind of who is really responsible for the destruction of their living standards. It's that simple.
Political party like Mussolini.
Here.
We are the year 2022. 100 years ago, 1922, is when fascism really begins in Europe. 1922.
Like, you might ask yourself that same exact question with Nazi Germany. You know, why did they do this? Well, there was tremendous economic instability, and there was a growing momentum of communism, trade unionism, socialism in the country at a time of unprecedented economic volatility in the aftermath of World War I and the damage that that caused. And one group quickly seized on this and redirected that enmity towards social groups that were both simultaneously incredibly powerful and also incredibly weak and dangerous. And those groups ended up seizing all of the power while directly collaborating with liberals in power and also with capital owners that wanted to maintain that same hierarchy. They wanted to maintain their same standards of profit. They wanted to continue the way that the system was going. They were more fearful of a workers' revolt or revolution than they were of some kind of fascist control, because fascist control would mean, yeah, sure, a lot of people get killed in the process, but I'm fine. I'm a business owner and I get to maintain my profits. If profits are the highest order of priority for you, you don't care what happens to other people. You don't care what happens to workers. You don't care what happens to workers that become non-citizens in the process, as long as those workers don't actually eat away at your profit margins.
It was the year of something called the March on Rome. It was October of 1922 when Mussolini led the March on Rome and took over in what was basically a coup d'etat, taking over the Italian government. And he then instituted a fascist regime. It lasted from 1922 until around 1944. At that point, it came to an end, and Mr. Mussolini was hung upside down in the street and killed by the people that he had led, which tells you something about fascism. Hopefully, you will remember. The next case of fascism happens 11 years later. It's January 1933.
This is so funny. Someone said, "Is Hasan covering the LA raids yet?" Is such a funny thing to ask right at this moment. Yes, I am. In the process of covering that, I'm explaining to you this concept as well, how and why fascism takes root in society, how it's currently happening in the United States of America. And, you know, that is a part of my coverage.
And in Germany, the government
there, Knife, thank you for the 5
turns
gifted.
itself over. Didn't require quite the coup d'etat, but it took not that different a form. Turned the government over to the leader of a fascist political party, like Mussolini in Italy, only his name was Adolf Hitler, and he was head of the Nazi Party. And a few years later, in 1936, a democratically elected government in Spain was overthrown by an illegal military revolt of General Franco, who waged a civil war, displaced that government, and established Spanish fascism, which lasted several decades. And then he died. And Spain reverted back to a non-fascist arrangement. Those are the three major fascisms we know about. And what I'm about to tell you is what we know from what they actually did. Before each of them, capitalism, the dominant economic system in each of those three countries, was content with and satisfied with what we are familiar with as parliamentary democratic government. You know, elections every year, people elected to one or two house legislature, like our Congress, and going about the normal business of running a capitalist society. Everybody gets to vote, we pay a lot of attention, but the people with the money, the capitalists, the wealthy, the big CEOs, they run the show because they donate to the parties, they donate to the candidates, their lobbyists help write the laws. We're all familiar with that because we're used to that here too. The problem is, in each of those countries, the capitalism that was normally perfectly happy with conventional representative electoral democracy was falling apart. The capitalism was producing such suffering, such anger, such bitterness among the mass of people that there was a developing anti-capitalist movement. And this scared the capitalist class, the owners of the enterprises, the big CEOs. They could see the handwriting on the wall. In Italy, just before fascism, you had the greatest general strike in the history of the country in Torino, led by a then obscure communist named Antonio Gramsci, who becomes one of the great communist theoreticians of the 20th century. terrified people. In 1917, a few years before, an anti-capitalist revolution in Russia.
By the way, yeah, Gramsci went to prison, or was in exile, I guess. But something to also consider is that liberals unironically look to this period of historical struggle and will, without a hint of self-reflection, claim that it was actually the communists that were responsible for the rise in fascism. You understand? Now, saying that at the time was wrong, right? Saying that at the time was wrong, and that was the reason why liberals actually aligned with fascists. Okay? But saying that right now, almost 100 years after the fact, is insane. Saying that 100 years after the fact is like, well, you know what happened. You know what took its place.
Succeeded, terrified capitalists everywhere in the world, here in the U.S. too. So there was this sense it's falling apart, our system. And when that happens, there's a strong push, doesn't always succeed, but a strong push to push aside representative democracy, all of that, and have the iron heel, the iron fist. Change the government from that game to one where its job is to control the society, repress every critic of capitalism you can find, do it all in the name of the race or the nation or patriotism, to give it all a better sounding name than saying we're going to save capitalism by crushing everybody who
Yeah. So for those of you asking, like, what is the purpose of all of this? This is it. This is it. This is the purpose. It is to reinstate control, complete control of society, repression of civil liberties, complete and utter totalitarian control in an effort to maintain the existing hierarchies when there is unprecedented instability against, born out of said capitalist hierarchies.
disagrees with it, everybody who has turned against it. So it is done in the name of, well, the nation, nationalism. It's a good way of covering it over. Everything we're doing is not about preserving capitalism.
This
That's
person is so
agenda.
funny. I just spent so much time describing that these people, bro, they are criminals. Why defend them? Why can't illegal migrants apply for visas like every normal person? They have. They are. Like the people that are being apprehended, the people that are currently being apprehended are legally, they have a legal right to be on U.S. soil and work. Are you watching on mute? What is going on? They literally are. The problem here is the difference between an undocumented migrant and a documented one is just paperwork. So the government can just as easily offer them documentation or deny them said documentation while they're in the process of receiving said documentation and claim that they have to be removed. And that process of removal, I think he meant before, they are though. These are people who are in the process. That's the whole point. They're having their legal pathway towards receiving American citizenship revoked from them. That's the point.
It's about preserving the nature, or preserving white America, if you bring it over into us, or preserving the Italian soul, or preserving genuine Spain, whatever it was always the same. And here's what it involved. You crush the labor unions. You either kill them, that happened often, jail them, exile them, no more labor unions. You go after the socialists.
I don't know if you remember, but last year you watched a news clip of veterans visiting Normandy again. The one guy who spoke was my great-grandpa, chillest guy ever. He died shortly after that clip aired, but I kid you not, he wore a Palestinian pin I brought him in 2014 on his penny loafers till the day he died from the river to the sea. Oh my God. That's amazing, Chatter. I mean, I'm sorry for your loss. I remember making a joke about how your grandfather, your great-grandfather, was literally more coherent than Joe Biden. It's always the good ones that go before the bad ones. I guess that's the point. That's Blau's grandpa too, for the record. Blau's grandpa, the oldest Hasanabi head at the time, who recently passed, who passed a couple months ago, he was also another World War II veteran who's Jewish and also was an anti-Zionist. It's crazy. It's crazy how a lot of people who fought Nazis were like, "Hey, I don't really fuck with the new Nazi movement that's growing. We fought and almost died to, stop this. Why is it coming back again? I don't really like that. I don't really like that at all."
You go after the communists. Antonio Gramsci, the leader of the Communist Party in Italy, the leader of that great strike, was imprisoned by Mussolini and spent the last 20 years of his life in jail. Hitler killed people, so that was easier. And in the Spanish Civil War, vast numbers of people were killed as well. So that's what it is. It's capitalism enforced. You still have employers and employees, like capitalism before. The leaders of the capitalist.
Yeah, don't forget, during Nazi Germany, during the reign of Nazi Germany and the terror, people still went to work. Okay? People were still going to work. There were still bosses and workers. Their living standards were getting worse and worse year over year because fascism is inherently suicidal and is inherently destructive.
Industries remained there unless they were deemed to be not part of the nation. Don't be fooled. Underneath the veneer of the government coming in is the ultimate purpose: protect capitalism. That's why it's there. That's why this is done. It's the extreme of capitalism having produced its own negation, its own opposition, its own self-destruction that calls forth the fascist alternative to come in there and deal with things.
The clip of you saying he's more mentally focused than Biden. It is kind of wild. He is kind of eating right now. He is kind of fucking gagging Biden with his. This is Chatter's great grandpa. His mental fortitude. I'm not gonna lie. This is kind of backfiring a little bit. The more I hear him at his fucking old ass age of like 110 or however old he is, the more I'm like, damn, I don't think Brandon's got it like that. What's happening here? Uh-oh.
All those years ago, saving mementos. What's this?
That's a piece of shrapnel.
Like this tiny piece of shrapnel from a German bomb that exploded close to his boat. It's also a chance to honor friends who didn't make it home, remembering the past with a message for younger generations.
I want them to learn to live.
Always hated war action movies, told us propaganda was a thing in the 90s and insisted that we look inwards until the end. He would have liked the conversation and cigar with you, man. Aw. Rest in power to your great grandpa. What a goat. What a legend. One reason people in the U.S. don't see fascism creeping is because they can't imagine that something this bad could happen here. Denial is a powerful thing until it's too late. I think that plays a role in this for sure. There's also a lot of people who just simply are like American entitlement, American exceptionalism, American individualism are such powerful forces, such powerful cultural forces in this country that a lot of people genuinely don't understand how this will inevitably impact them. Okay? They don't understand how this will impact them in the short term when, you know, even for selfish reasons, even if you can't recognize the humanity of these people being ripped apart, right? You can at the very least recognize that, like, when this kind of instability takes root, who's going to fucking pick the fruit? You can think about it in an incredibly selfish way like that. But even then, Americans have no capacity to recognize that, right? Because they're too stupid. But then also, in the long term, these kinds of violent enforcement actions will inevitably creep its way into your life as well. It will happen to someone that you love, a neighbor, an immediate family member, a loved one. This is an unstoppable force. It does not go away. Fascism is like a ticking time bomb where you either try to stop it dead in its tracks at its inception, or once enough instability and enough violence has taken root in society that the dam breaks and everyone engages in popular mobilization. And the problem is, the longer you wait to stop these kinds of actions, to stop fascism from growing, the harder it will be to resist against it. And the death toll will be far larger. The example I always use is Israel, right? Israel is a full-blown fascist society. And there are ways of stopping Israel right now. Israel is doing an ethnic cleansing campaign as a fascist society. The immediate ways of stopping Israel is a simple phone call by the American government. If that doesn't happen, then there has to be a lot of pressure against the American government. Let's say enough pressure mounts against the American government, so the American government has to recalculate their allegiance to Israel, and then they make that phone call. If Israel says, no, we're going to continue doing this death and destruction campaign, and America's like, well, you can't say no to us, then comes sanctions. Sanctions are consequential for Israeli society. Some people might be harmed as a consequence of those sanctions because they're an act of collective punishment. If Israel says, no, we're going to still keep doing it after those sanctions, what comes next? Military intervention. So there are always meaningful points of pressure. Civil disobedience and protests are the actual most peaceful ways of resisting against these kind of fascist actions. Violence in retaliation against this sort of thing is inevitable. When it reaches a certain boiling point, people are inevitably going to say, well, fuck you. You've killed my family, or you've arrested and sent a loved one to a slave labor colony. That's unacceptable. It will build too much resentment. In America, the mechanism of control has always been commodity consumption and also the pressure valve of the 2-year period of the democratic process, right? The idea that you have a say, the idea that your voice matters, the idea that, like, you can actually enact marginal change by voting for one party over the next. But when people recognize that that pressure valve is not real, it's just aesthetic, and that authoritarianism, which is something that Americans don't actually like, when it's directed like this, when it's directional in this way, okay? When Gestapo time takes place, when it's happening in broad daylight, then people will inevitably take up action against these sorts of government interventions. I think you overestimate people's tolerance for oppression. Authoritarian regimes murdered and enslaved people by millions before being toppled by military defeat, not popular revolt. Although popular revolt may have come after the military defeat. No, there was every step of the way there was militant resistance. That's not true. I think that's whitewashing history. Every step of the way there was militant resistance, and it happened without the internet. It happened without everyone being constantly interconnected with one another. Fuck, man. Many Border Patrol vehicles and other unmarked cars just exited the anti-ICE protest area in Paramount, California. They were met with fierce resistance from protesters, with a number of vehicles being visibly damaged. Do these ICE agents even feel bad? I have to imagine there's got to be at least a couple. Eventually, they'll run out of agents, right? I mean, it's like saying, do the Gestapo feel bad? I don't think so. They're just following orders, you know? Yeah. Also, speaking of Democratic culpability in this process, this is from January 30th, 2025. First 10 days into the Trump administration. Here is U.S. Senator from Connecticut, Chris Murphy. In the first week, Trump removed 7,300 people. On average, Biden was removing 15,000 a week. Under Biden, 72% of arrests were criminals. Under Trump, it dropped to around 50%. Trump is removing less people and less criminals. These guys are terrible at everything. Why are you covering this as though there is like validity to the claims of criminal migrants? We were much better at removing these sick, perverted migrant criminals. Sick, man. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Angeles. Again, we will keep you updated on what's happening here downtown throughout the night and tomorrow morning on KTLA. For now, we are live downtown. Lindsay Pena, KTLA 5 News. Back to you.
Lindsay, thank you. And from the ground to the air, let's go to Gil Labus over downtown LA in Sky 5.
If the Democrats don't do anything here, if the Democrats don't actually even do a little bit of the bare minimum protections for its constituents here, there is no reason for them to exist. It's completely over. This is, I know I've said this already time and time again, and I will probably repeat myself quite frequently, but fascism is here, okay? And I don't mean like, oh, you say everything is fascism. Like, this is the historic fascist policies that we know and we dislike. We have seen it. We have seen this happen throughout history. This is the moment of truth. Do liberals completely capitulate? Which I think they are. They have so far. But we have Hold on one second. We've officially crossed the Rubicon, and we're now at an impasse. Does the administration get away with it? Or do they get away with it with at least ample resistance from the Democrats, like protections from the Democrats?
Gil.
Cher and Micah, this is the small group that Lindsay was just talking.
What can they do, Law? Are you kidding me? California as a state is a nation state in and of itself, whose economy is like the 5th largest economy on the planet. California has an army. California as a nation state is profoundly important to the American to the American nation. Okay? It's the 4th largest. I'm sorry. It's not even the 5th largest. It is the 4th largest. California as a state is the 4th largest nation state economy on the planet. Just the state alone. Do you understand? Do you know how incredible that is? Do you know how much power Governor Newsom has? It is a sanctuary state. It's supposed to be a sanctuary state. I've used like this and abortion protections and like, queer protections and stuff like that are the last good things that this goddamn state has to offer. That's the whole point of California. That's the whole point of California, is that like it's a massive nation. It's a massive state that has a massive economy that contributes so much to the rest of the world, but specifically to the rest of the United States of America. It is supposed to protect migrants. That's it. No real Californian would ever turn around and make a big fuss about undocumented migrants at all. This is a border state that has more undocumented migrants and documented migrants in it than Texas. And yet, it's never a talking point. It's never been a talking point. Oh, we're full. California's full. We have too much. We have too many people. That is not the California way at all. People don't even entertain that. Okay? People don't even entertain that notion here. Like, yes, the average Californian is unironically a Hitlerite when it comes to homelessness, and crime panic narratives are very, very popular here, for sure. A lot of that is born out of the unaffordable housing and the housing crisis that exists within the state that Gavin Newsom refuses to fucking deal with because he is firmly invested in the same corporate benefactors that pump the Republican Party at the national level, the real estate developers and the like. Having said that, however, when it comes to undocumented migrants, Californians do not have that same reactionary attitude that Texans do. This is a state that has grown with migrant labor, okay? This is a state that became the 4th largest economy on the planet as a standalone state with migrant labor. Why is that? Both are border states. Because California sees no reason to fucking engage in this kind of idiotic reactionary fucking propaganda. Texas does, in order to maintain its dominance. To be real, it's always been a point of complaint for Orange County. California is not a complete monolith. Yes, the reactionary enclaves exist. It doesn't change the overarching attitudes in California. Okay? Fuck Orange County. It's like saying, okay, well, in Santee, people actually hate migrants. Yeah, I know. It's Clanty for a reason. It's called Clanty for a fucking reason. I know. You can point to reactionary enclaves in this massive, expansive, ginormous state.
About a dozen, the last of the protesters here leaving the area. They were just up against the California Highway Patrol, who have opened all on-ramps and off-ramps to the 101 freeway here, but that small group now moving north of the freeway at this point. They were over on Temple and Los Angeles Street, which is now cleared, but the federal officers moved over there, and we're monitoring that group, that small group here. They marched all the way up here to the CHP that were here on Aliso, but they have moved on since. That's the latest overhead up in Sky 5. I'll send it back to you in the studio.
Okay, Gil, thank you. The mayor.
Dressed for war, clutching onto armoured vehicles through the streets of Los Angeles. It's images like these that are striking fear into migrant communities across America, where an already zealous immigration department known as ICE has been instructed to ramp up their raids and are doing so with enthusiasm. On Tuesday, 2,200 people were arrested, a record high. Protests against the treatment of migrants took place outside detention centres, with one gathering turning violent. Elsewhere, demonstrators criticised the arbitrary nature of the arrests.
Our community is under attack and is being terrorized.
Yeah, the World Cup is next year, by the way, is so crazy to me, because now we also have implemented this this silly ass like Muslim ban 2.0, and not even just Muslim ban, but just like every country that America dominates ban 2.0 from all around the world. We got the Olympics, we got the World Cup. Like, none of this makes sense. U.S. tourism has taken a goddamn nosedive in the process. It's crazy.
These are workers. These are fathers. These are...
I don't know why history has to repeat itself, by the way, this aggressively. It's like Germany had the Olympics in 38. I know. Why does history have to repeat itself in this incredibly blunt manner? It's so fucking crazy. Or 36, not 38. Like, what a... It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense how people can't understand it. It's like bludgeoning them in the head. It's right in front of them. Why did you learn anything? Why did you learn anything in school if you're not going to apply it to your current living standards right now?
Our mothers. And this has to stop.
The record total comes after instruction from the White House demanding that ICE arrest 3,000 people a day, even without warrants. But the approach has been criticised for denying basic legal rights.
They just told us right now that they're suspending all attorney visits, so they're denying access to us attorneys who are here to represent.
Also illegal, by the way. Everything they're doing is illegal. The fact that they're able to do this and operate like this in the state of California is insane to me. You are the state of California. Use the National Guard against the fucking ICE agents, if that's what it takes, to force the lawyers to go in to these facilities. That's not something you can do. Like, the ICE can't do this. They don't have this kind of power. What are we doing? And if it's might is right, if might is right politics is what's happening, then show your fucking might.
Clients.
The chaotic nature of the new approach is epitomised by the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, wrongfully deported to El Salvador in March. A legal showdown between the courts and President Trump left him languishing in a notorious El Salvadorian prison.
Also, all this militarization all this militarization was inevitably going to be used against Americans. Like, it was inevitably going to be used domestically. And here we are.
For months. Yesterday, the White House announced they were bringing him back to face charges of trafficking undocumented migrants within the US, framing this as the next stage in a legal process, rather than acquiescing to any court ruling.
Our government presented El Salvador with an arrest warrant, and they agreed to return him to our country. We're grateful to President Bukele for agreeing to return him to our country to face these very serious charges. This is what American justice looks like.
But Abrego Garcia's lawyer says this is exactly the opposite, calling the charges he faces in Tennessee an abuse of power.
I think what this really goes to show is that this administration, instead of simply admitting a mistake and apologizing, this matter could have gone away within a week or two after the case being filed. Instead of simply admitting their mistake, they'll stop at nothing at all, even some of the most preposterous charges imaginable.
But court battles and protests are just a minor irritation for President Trump. What he cares about is whether his tough line on immigration is working and popular with his base. And on those fronts, he's on top. In the year to April, attempted crossings at the border are down by over 90%.
Republicans are trying to avoid potential fallout from the billionaire brawl between President.
Yeah, it's crazy because they could have just brought him back at any point, and this is obvious because they did bring him back. I have this sneaking suspicion that the reason why they brought him back, by the way, with this ridiculous charge, was to get ahead of a potential court order and a constitutional crisis that they would inevitably lose. Okay? I think they knew they have to still at least like keep up the aesthetics that they're abiding by the normal standards and they're abiding by the rule of law. And that's the reason why they were like, all right, if we have to bring him back, because that's what the Maryland judge order was, let's bring him back with this, this silly ass charge. And that way we can dominate the media narrative that like he actually is a violent criminal with these post hoc charges that they slapped on. And in the process of the court case, by the time the court case goes against us, by the time by the time the courts basically decide that these charges are ridiculous and he goes free, it'll be so late in the game that, we will have flooded the media. We would have flooded the markets with this stupid ass idea that like, no, this guy was worthy of deportation, even if we did it with a post hoc rationalization. By that point, they will have moved on to the next thing, Chaos erupts at U.S. federal courthouse in New York City as ICE detains a man just moments after his immigration case is dismissed.
Wait a minute. Jesus.
Get off, guys. You're obstructing a federal arrest. Obstructing a federal arrest. Get on the ground. Get back. Get back. Get back. Back up. Stop fighting. Stop resisting. Stop fighting. Stop resisting. Stop resisting. Hey, arrest this. Hey, get the fuck back. Get back. Get the fuck back. Back up. Back up. Back up. Hey, ma'am, back up. Hey, back up.
This is in a courthouse, dude.
Señor, hermano ahora. Ya. Perdón. Stop resisting. Stop resisting.
Nazi fucking pigs. Of course. For the record, if it was up to this current administration, even saying that they're Nazi fucking pigs will be illegal. And maybe if they get their wishes across, it eventually will be.
Fucking resisting.
I'll get him. You gotta get back up. Just give us space. You gotta get back. You can get pinched. Just get back. I'm trying. Yo, get FPS up here. Get FPS up here. Watch out. Just watch out. You gotta get back. Just try to get something off the ground. You gotta get back.
Someone get his name. What's his name?
Yeah, here, by the way, the reason why I say this is because of this. ICE acting director responds to political rhetoric causing anti-ICE sentiment and threats to federal officers and their families. I'm not asking them to stop. I'm demanding that they stop.
Officers and agents walk into danger so other people can sleep safely at night. So kids can make it to school safely and play outside.
Scumbags.
So while it's easy to be an armchair quarterback and make up talking points that get activists riled up, the bottom line is my officers and agents are out there protecting the same people who are threatening their safety. Law enforcement's common sense. Politicians need to stop putting my people in danger. I'm not asking them to stop. I'm demanding that they stop. Here's what I have to say to Boston Mayor Michelle Wu, Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, and anyone else stirring up the outrage about what ICE does. These are real people with real families you're hurting with your ridiculous rhetoric and inflammatory comments. And it's time to remember that.
Stop calling our ICE agents that are doing Gestapo shit. Gestapo is hurting our fucking Nazi feelings, you know? Amused. Terror. Democrats using psychological warfare against FBI agents just doing their jobs in LA. The goal is to elicit a violent response they can use against you as propaganda against the government. Bro, everyone turns into Israel, dude. It's so funny. Like, this is the most Israel-ass comment I've ever seen. This is the same as like, oh, the terror babies are trying to get us to kill them with their words to piss us off, so that they garner sympathy. Everything is IDF. Everything is Israel coded.
You feel guilty about all the bad shit you do, you dumb motherfucker?
You guys don't do shit.
Stretch it out. Stretch it out. Dumb motherfucker.
You don't do shit.
Keep making eye contact with me. Keep making eye contact with me. You like looking at me. Keep making eye contact with me. Yeah, come over here. Okay, I'll see you later.
You're caring about people's lives. But you're little fucking white supremacist ass bitches. You don't fucking do shit for the world. You're a waste
Geldi,
of
evet.
space. Read the last page of Mussolini's biography, you pieces of shit.
Read Mussolini's biography, you pieces of shit.
No ice in LA. No ice in LA. No ice in LA. We're here. You're getting paid. We're here because we fucking care. You Nazi skinhead pig fucker. No ice.
If they knew how to read, they'd be so pissed. They would learn. They would feel so much shame if they knew how to read or write, you know?
In LA. No ice. They're laughing because they're scared. Because they know that we have the heart. Everybody else.
Yeah. By the way, people with a megaphone are being considered terrorists in this circumstance, and not the heavily militarized domestic occupation. Like, these aren't people who are terrorizing. It's those who are yelling against these people. That's fucking insanity.